Hello, and welcome to this Academic Success Workshop on reading academic texts. In this workshop, you will learn some strategies for more effective reading. Let's start in a good way by acknowledging that the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. As a reader, do you consider yourself a driver or a passenger? Do you decide what to read next, or do you expect the author to lead you? Do you sometimes find yourself daydreaming or falling asleep, or are you alert and plugging away toward your destination? Do you know exactly where you're going and what paths to take, or are you just enjoying the scenery? According to neuroscience research, those who have some control over their learning environment do better at remembering what they learned than those who don't. Being a passive reader may be okay if you don't have a lot at stake and have time to read. Do you have a lot of time to read? Does how much and how well you study determine what grades you'll get in a class? Let's take a closer look at what active readers do. Active readers have clear goals. They have a purpose and are constantly evaluating whether they are meeting their reading goals. Active readers typically preview the text before they read, noting such things as the structure of the text and text sections that might be most relevant to their reading goals. As they read, they think ahead, they make predictions and anticipate where the writer is going with their argument or exposition. They decide whether they need to read something. They decide whether they should read carefully or quickly, and they skip what they don't need to read. Active readers construct meaning and revise their constructs as they learn more. They also note inconsistencies and gaps. Active readers use dictionaries to understand unfamiliar words. They think about the author's word use. They break down a sentence to its basic components if the grammar and sentence structure is difficult. They consider the logistics of a sentence and concepts in the text, and they deal with inconsistencies or gaps. They check their understanding of the text and go back and fill in those gaps. Active readers use their prior knowledge to compare the material in the text with what they already know. They consider the author's style, assumptions, context, professional background. They evaluate the quality of the text and react intellectually and emotionally. Active readers know that reading a textbook requires a different set of skills than reading an email. They are familiar with different types of text and know that texts have a variety of structures and organizational patterns. When reading narrative text, active readers notice details about the setting and characters. And when reading informational text, they summarize and re-summarize the reading to make sure they understood. Active readers continue thinking about their reading even when they stop reading. Here's a systematic way to read actively. The ACE method incorporates basic memory and cognition principles. In this system, the reader begins by previewing the text, which helps organize and activate prior knowledge and prepares the brain for the deeper reading to follow. A second pass to the reading is to help you understand the text. At this comprehension stage, readers take the time to understand before they engage in higher order thinking or critical thinking and start working with some of the concepts learned in the text. Finally, in the last stage, you evaluate your learning through objective self-assessment. Let's take a look at each stage in more detail. The activation stage is like stretching before a workout. First, you consider your purpose for reading. What kind of reading are you expected to do? Do you need a detailed knowledge of the subject? then you will need to read the material closely. But if you just need to know the main points, begin by reading only the section titles. Maybe you don't need to read a particular book at all. Maybe you only need to find certain passages in it. Read the index or table of contents first for page numbers to the appropriate sections. It doesn't mean you're cheating if you're avoiding non-essential material. Reading to write is different than reading or studying for an exam. When you're reading to find sources that support your arguments, you might need to first survey a lot of summaries or abstracts to find sources that are relevant to your research. Once you narrow down your sources, you'll read to get the main ideas. Once you find ideas, you'll slow down and read carefully to see if it really is something that you can use in your writing. And you think about how that text relates to your ideas. Knowing why you're reading will help you choose the right strategy for reading. At this stage, you also want to activate prior knowledge. Here you can read the table of contents, titles, headings, and subheadings. Take a look at a summary or study questions at the back or a glossary. Read any questions, pictures, diagrams, note words or ideas in bold or italics, and look at graphs, tables, and figures. Note how familiar you are with the topic. Do you need to do some research to build your background knowledge? Maybe you're an international student who is not familiar with the cultural nuances of the new culture. Or maybe you need to learn more about pop culture or historical or current events. You can build this background knowledge before you start your reading. At this stage, you can also plan out your time and reading space. Ask yourself how long you can study. How much do you plan to cover? Consider how you study best. Do you need to go to a library to avoid distractions? At the second stage of the process, you want to understand the reading. This is your deep dive into the text. Here you can begin by first turning the headings and subheadings into questions to be answered as you read. As you come across new words, note their definitions or synonyms. Find the keys to the reading, that is the main claim or purpose statement. An overarching claim or assertion is the central thrust of the reading. All the data, facts, or more minor claims support this thesis or assertion. If you feel lost in the reading, you can go back and think about how what you're reading connects to this theme. To find the overarching claim, you can look at the end of the introduction or introductory statement. Sometimes it appears in other places in the text, and sometimes it is implicit, but a text will almost always have such a central thrust or controlling idea. Authors will often use signal words to tell you what they are trying to persuade you of, especially if they're honest and care about making their ideas clear to the reader. A purpose statement announces the scope and direction of the paper. It tells exactly what a document intends to achieve, and often how it will achieve it. A purpose statement is like a contract that tells the reader what they'll find in the text without giving out particular conclusions that the writer has drawn. Like the thesis or the overarching claim, a purpose statement usually appears toward the end of the introduction. The purpose statement may be expressed in several sentences or even an entire paragraph, and may begin with phrases like, "This paper examines," "The aim of this paper is to," or "The purpose of this essay is to." At this comprehension stage, pay attention to words that are repeated, defined, used in new or unique ways, and that are relevant to the purpose or central idea. These are key words. By the time you finish the comprehension stage, your text will be well marked or full of sticky notes. You will have noted relevancy to lectures, course syllabus, and assignments. You will have noted definitions and marked them as definitions in the margins. Your text might have been turned into bullet points, lists, diagrams. You will have marked any inconsistencies, confusions, and unanswered questions, or questions that you want to ask your professor or your TA. You will also have marked what you agree with or what you disagree with, what you love and what you hate about the text. You should feel satisfied with your reading and processing of the text. Active reading is active learning, and active learning is studying. The third step in the ACE method is engagement in higher order thinking. When you engage in higher order thinking, you are applying the facts and concepts you've learned. Your professors will rarely ask you to stop at defining or remembering facts. Rather, they might ask you to apply what you learned to your life or your occupation, explain its importance in the larger scheme of things, or consider its implications. To move on to higher thinking levels, you can ask yourself, am I reading about a process or procedure or a principle? How does this apply to real life, another problem or context? What is the best rationale, plan, solution, course of action given this information? What problem is being solved here? What can I do with this information now that I know it? You can also use the question stems in Bloom's taxonomy to push yourself up the rungs of academic thinking. You can create tasks, assignments, and questions for yourself using some of these STEM words. For example, if you feel you have a good understanding of a concept, you might task yourself with finding a real-life example or look for it in real life. You might want to compare it with another similar concept or critique it, weigh its value. Finally, you might want to create your own concept by changing and improving on the original. A final step in the ACE reading process is to check your understanding. Here, you can construct an objective evaluation or a test. When you test yourself, you get a true sense of how much you've learned. Through this objective feedback to yourself, you will know what you need to continue learning, and you will study to fill in your gaps. Here are some ways you can demonstrate your own understanding. You can create a summary of main ideas in your own words. You can define the key terms in your words and check if you have all the details correctly. You could also run these explanations by your professor and ask them to correct you. You can paraphrase the concepts in your writing or explain them to someone else. Also, you can summarize each paragraph in one solid, complete, grammatically correct, and precise sentence. This is actually really hard to do, but very valuable. You can create visual representations of the whole reading or sections. You can note relationships by creating concept maps, outlines, flowcharts. Some of you may have heard of Quizlet. A lot of students create study cards in Quizlet, but Quizlet also has a testing feature. You can create Quizlet tests or worksheets for both higher and lower order understanding. Create short answer and long answer tests to practice retrieval, not just recognition. And you can simulate your testing conditions by choosing the type of test that you'll have to take in your course. The Feynman technique is an excellent way to refine your understanding of a concept. To use this technique, first write the name of the concept at the top of the page. Then explain it in easy terms. As you're explaining it, pay attention to what areas are still muddy or unclear and fill in the gaps. Finally, identify any convoluted or difficult technical terms and explain them in easy, simple language. Academic reading is challenging without a doubt, but active reading will make it easier, and you won't be wasting your time and finding that you don't remember anything in an exam. Don't be afraid to read the text several times and mark it to fully process and stay engaged. Make it your own. Use resources to understand foreign concepts and build your background knowledge. And give yourself enough time. Take breaks and try to get enough sleep. Take a nap to regenerate if you need to. Read in a quiet place. Choose focused music to help you concentrate. And above all, take care of yourself. Happy reading, everyone.